Did you say an Austro-libertarian? Is that the new? Okay. All right. Cool. And oh wait, what do you mean no audio? Oh fuck me. Sorry, buddy. You were muted. Tell us one more time, because I'm a goddamn amateur. Tell everybody who you are, what you're about, and what Australopithecus is, please.
Right, so I'm a Groofus both on Discord and on Twitch. I'm a libertarian who believes in Austrian economics, and if and when I stream, I talk politics or game on Twitch.
Very cool, very cool. All right. Jim, do I actually have your socials yet?
That's a good question, brother. I don't know.
I do not.
Maybe?
I do not. If you would throw me a link, sir, I would appreciate that. You can do it in the Discord or whatever. Just because I like to put it in the chat whenever you guys are talking. So I'll give you a split second to get that sent. And
you know what? Let me get my link tree. Link tree.
Hey, that's the fancy one. What is Obsidian? Yeah, what is Obsidian?
It's a lazy way to do it. Obsidian is a note system. It's like it's what people like myself and Destiny and a lot of other people use.
And Circa. He's the only person who shares his Obsidian. So, all right. Did you put it in the Discord room, or did you give it to me?
I'll just link my. Just be quicker.
Or did you just put it in the chat? All right, cheers. That works. All right, very cool. Then in that case, Mr. Russell, please let the folks know who you are, what you're about, and where they can find you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Jim Russell. Stream on Twitch and Kick. My background's in philosophy. Typically, we talk about things like ufology. Sometimes we get into philosophy, but I stream like 4 or 5 days a week. But that's typically what it revolves around is following the current disclosure movement that's happening. So yeah, that's if my community comes in, I see a couple of men here right now. That's typically what we have conversation about. So yeah, that's it.
Well, very cool. You can't see my background right now, but I do have a tinfoil hat within reach at all times, just in case. So that said, your opponent tonight, Mr. Hammer, please tell the folks who you are, what you're about, and where they can find you.
Hey, Mr. Hammer. I stream mostly on weekends. I talk a little bit about politics if people want it, and otherwise I play. Right now I'm playing League of Legends and Slay the Spire, and I'm grinding my way to the top on both games. So I can put my links in chat.
Yeah, if you would, that'd save me a click or two while I'm trying to get Mr. Russell's dropped in where they belong, and it's just totally not fucking working. So I'll have to come back to that later. That's all right. I know I will get it. I promise. All right, and for a repeat performer here, if you're feeling adventurous, please tell us who you are, what you're about, and where we can find you.
Greetings and salutations, mortal men and gentles alike. The names, if you're feeling adventurous, on Twitch, X, YouTube, and you can find me on a few other channels as well, because I have multiple channels, but that's easy to find me if you're feeling adventurous, those 3 platforms. I'm a Christian, husband, father, author, business owner, and you name it, I've done it or thought about doing it. And on my stream, we kind of do whatever we're feeling that day. Lots of community engagement, lots of arguing politics. We just kind of go where the adventure takes us.
Very cool, very cool. And your opponent tonight is going to be, of course, Vigilante TV. Vigi, please tell everybody who you are, what you're about, and where to find you.
I'm the Vigilante TV. I stream on Twitch, post on Twitter, and post on TikTok sometimes as well. I mostly do politics, debates. I do games sometimes. It's been very rare that I do gaming streams lately, though. I'll oftentimes, when I do stream debates, I'll play video games while I'm debating. Just keep my mind working, so... Yeah.
And also, they're going to be able to see you very soon in the Word War debate, allegedly, if that ever actually falls into place. Fingers crossed that it will. So, Lethe, were you able to join? Yes, you did. Very cool. All right, then. Let's kick this shit off.
Lethe is deafened.
Lethe is deafened. That's all right. He doesn't need to hear what I'm about to say. He's heard it before. All right. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Demilitarized Zone. This is the one stream designed to help you feel better about engaging in hot button issues with people you disagree with. Our goal here is to teach discourse survival tactics, not just farm gotchas and dunks. We are trying to cultivate meaningful, intelligent conversation where you actually have to stop and listen to the other person, even if it is just to find the flaws in what they are saying. So please attack the belief, not the believer. At least for tonight, check your weapons at the door, take notes, act like grown-ups, and refrain from the blood sports and shit-slinging that have plagued our politics and society for far too long. Also here, the audience gets a vote. There will be a link in the chat after each debate where you get to go to vote for your winner. So please limber up those voting fingers. It costs nothing, and exercise your democratic rights to decide which side made the most persuasive case. Now, our judges are also going to be weighing in. Our judges for tonight are Game Boy 64 on the left. Game Boy, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and who you are, where they can find you.
I'm Game Boy. I study female sociology and feminist studies. I'm known for orbiting Radish and Leve, along with other female performers like Claro. I'm here to have a fair and honest debate, although I don't want any slurs being thrown around, as I know Vigi likes to do. Anyway.
All right, and so now it is kind of important for you to tell us you are deafened. All right. All right, there you go. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you're about, and where we can find you. Very cool. All right, so our first debate of the night is going to be our second debate of the night, which is going to be democracy is subverted by big money interests. The way this is going to work, we're going to put 3 minutes on the clock for the affirmative debater. They get to give us their 3-minute opening. After that, 3 minutes is on the clock for the negative debater to ask questions and or set up arguments for their own opening. Then they get 3 minutes on the clock for an uninterrupted opening, followed by 3 minutes from the affirmative, who gets to knock down their arguments. After that 3-minute directed cross-examination, we go to 15 minutes of open conversation. That is where you guys just kind of get into it and have it out. Following that, we have 3-minute closes, also uninterrupted, also affirmative going first. And during that time, hopefully the audience is paying attention and they're deciding who they think was the most persuasive. They're also going to have the opportunity for just $2, throw into the tip jar a question for the debaters. Just let us know which debater it is that you have the question for, and we will get those in during the Q&A section. Also, barring that, each of the two judges is going to have a question for each of the two debaters, as well as myself, the moderator. After that, the judges are going to give us their verdict. They're going to give us their opinion. That opinion is going to be rendered in a 10-point system. There are 10 total points to distribute across the two debaters, so it can go anywhere from a 10-0 to a 5-5 and anywhere in between. And then we will go to the audience. As I said, there will be a link in the chat. I will share that in all of the different chats, and you guys can vote. Tell us who you thought made that best case. So, does anybody have any questions before we kick this off? Looks like Jim's finishing his drink. He's ready to kick this shit off. I'm gonna go ahead and
all
put 3
lubed
minutes
up,
on the
brother.
clock. All right, go ahead and start it up whenever you're ready. I will start the clock.
All right. Okay. Well, I thought I would use an argument here, an example, something relevant to what I usually talk about, which is the UAP disclosure process. It's currently unfolding in the U.S. mainly, but across the globe. So democracy is subverted by big money interests. So I thought I'd give you an example. This is an annotated argumentative chain here. So I thought I'd go through it. In the U.S., I should be able to do it in 3 minutes. Democracy is subverted by big money interests. So I thought I'd give you an example. This is an annotated argumentative chain here. So I thought I'd go through it. I should be able to do it in 3 minutes. So the Constitution gives Congress oversight authority over executive branch programs it funds. These are known as special access programs. Okay. Most classified programs are subject to graduated congressional notification, right? The most sensitive tier, which are known as waived, unacknowledged special access programs, otherwise known as WUSAPs, restrict notification to just 8 members. Credible whistleblower testimony by Mr. David Grush is his name, formally validated by the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the ICIG, alleges programs exist that evade even this restricted tier. So there's a tier above this that they cannot access. The mechanism of evasion is the housing of programs inside private defense contractors. Okay? This claim has been corroborated by veteran investigative journalists in congressional testimony, Mr. George Knapp, by senators of both parties, which we can elaborate on later here, by federal law, and recently by executive order. Okay? A constitutional branch of government has been locked out of programs funded by its own appropriations because those programs have been moved intentionally into the private sector. Okay? Democratic oversight has been subverted by big money interests then, right? If this has happened, right, and this has fairly definitively happened. So that is the argument that I have here, relevant to what I usually talk about, for why I think that that statement is true, is valid. I think democracy has been subverted by big money interests, namely the military-industrial complex, namely Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, etc. And we have some very credible testimony in regards to this. So that is my argument here. So we
All
can
right.
probably, I know I got 40 seconds left, I see. But,
nope, you don't have to use all of it. It's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and put 3 minutes on the clock now for you, Hammer. Cross-examine as you see fit, sir. It's your time.
Okay, so just like, can we summarize really quickly your issue with the policies that you've said that have been verified to happen, that like development of military technologies being contracted off to private industry, or is there something else that I'm missing?
That's effectively it. Because of that, there is no congressional oversight over what is being analyzed, essentially. So yeah, hence the claim that it's been subverted. Yeah.
Okay. So Congress has no. Sure. So I'm gonna go into my 2 questions that I wanted to ask from the beginning. What do you think is the function of democracy?
What do I think is a function of democracy? Oh, that's a good question, actually. Well, I mean, democratic is ruled by the people for the people, I guess, right? We obviously utilize a representative form of democracy by electing representatives, but that's, I guess, traditionally what it's known as now.
Right. Yeah. So, for the purpose of this debate, would you accept that we're talking about representative democracy of America? That is the intention.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, yeah, definitely. That's what we use. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I have the same definition of just generally channeling the will of the people through votes into a selected representative. What would you consider the requirements to call something subversion?
I think it's philosophically the correct word. What do I think would be the requirements? Well, I guess within this context, let's see here. Let's see what I have written down in regards to this. I think so. For instance, the form of democratic oversight still persists, but the substance of it, right, has essentially been hollowed out. So they have subverted their ability to do their job, right, and hold them accountable, right, for whatever they're playing around with. Which, obviously, according to the Gross, we're not going to get into the alien thing per se right now, but is fairly substantial. But that would be, I don't know, does that fit you? Do you agree with that, or
No, I don't really see. I
No,
don't
okay.
really see the connection of how the way that Congress decides to manage its powers or its abilities or its like privacy security level has anything to do with elections or voting or anything like that.
Say that again.
I don't see how the way that Congress manages uh its ability, its control and level of secrecy over certain aspects of a policy has anything to do with elections or or votes or anything like that?
You can go ahead and answer that, Russell.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very relevant. I mean, for instance, they're in charge of all kinds of things that are incredibly important, right? I mean, like the defense industry spending. I mean, you have to be able to. They have to be able to effectively audit what they're doing, right? I mean, so the relationship here. If I didn't, we probably even got. We'll get deeper into this, obviously. The relationship is that these aerospace companies, right, are taking funds from the people, right? And there is no way for them to properly audit sometimes where these funds are being allocated. It's a claim by Grush, for instance, right? So that is a huge problem, right? Because that's effectively like where is our money going? What are they doing with it? We don't know. Why? Well, they played games and they've hidden these programs away, and that is a claim that was made, and evidence has been put forward to support that claim. Some of it obviously is classified and was simply just substantiated by the inspector general, but the intelligence community inspector general. But yeah, I fail to see what you don't think that's relevant to democracy to have transparency in those kinds of programs.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in there. It's 3 minutes now is on the clock for your opening, Hammer. Go ahead and get at it when you're ready.
Sure. I know this isn't usual, but I'd like to start my opening by pointing out the fact that he didn't really come up, or Jim didn't really come up with a standard for what we would call subversion. And I would say that so I'm going to start off by saying, does big money, do corporations, do billionaires have a lot of influence in our our political sphere? And the answer is obviously yes. I'm not going to disagree with that. However, does having some level of influence throughout politics constitute subversion? No. I think that subversion is something very specific, and I don't think that anyone can meet that standard. The For me to call something subversion, and for it to be called subversion, I would say there has to be one of three requirements for an election. Either a candidate or policy that didn't get the most votes was elected, a section of the population was barred from voting, or the votes were somehow illegitimate. Now, the first two, a candidate or policy that didn't get the most votes was elected, I don't really think that's relevant. There's no evidence of that having anything to do with big money. Um, a section of the population was barred from voting. Again, I don't think we can talk about topics related to that. I don't think that has anything to do with big money. So the only way that you can justify that democracy is being subverted by big money is by claiming that the votes that people were casting were illegitimate. And the argument that is often used is that billionaires are using super PACs, right? So billionaires invest. So what the big money goes into, generally speaking, during this conversation, is in super PACs going towards advertisement to influence people's decisions on voting. And I think that calling that a subversion, in that people are no longer able to make proper voting decisions, I think is I think that statement itself is anti-democratic, because
Well, that's
all
gonna
that's
go.
happening is that people are being convinced, people are being persuaded. And if you think that people being persuaded by some corporation makes their ability to democratically vote illegitimate, then there is no situation where you would justify or allow a democratic vote to take place without calling it illegitimate. That is my opening.
All right. And in that case, we're going to go ahead and go back to this. So now, Jim, it's your turn. 3 minutes to ask the questions directly, and you control the time. So go ahead and start it up whenever you're ready.
Okay. You can start it now, dude.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, how define subversion for me, I guess, Hammer.
Yeah, so subversion would be causing the democratic process that happens to be illegitimate
Okay. Right. So here's
in
another debate
some
we
way,
could use.
or less
Right.
or less legitimate, right?
Right. Okay. So like we could say the systematic in regards to this instance, this is a specific instance of big money. So I'll use aerospace companies, more broadly the military industrial complex. They have subverted the democratic process to some, well, they've subverted our elected representatives to properly represent us and audit them, because they're unable to, because they've hidden these programs. And we found fairly definitively that they've done so. So within this context, the definition I would use would be the systematic hollowing of an institution's substance while preserving its outward form, right? So obviously we still have democracy, but the machinery is still running, but it's for the benefit of actors other than its rightful principles. But essentially, they're doing that for a reason, right? Which is so they can do whatever they want without any kind of direct oversight or accountability. So that it's a specific instance. I don't necessarily disagree with you more broadly, but specifically, here's an example of right one actor that has big money that has done this. That's what I'm trying to say with my opening, just to clarify. So do you disagree with that though? That if they've done that, which we know fairly, and again, I good faith there. I want to be transparent with what we know and we don't know. But that's what Grush's testimony effectively did in 2023, which is why it was such a big deal. And it was validated by the then Intelligence Community Inspector General, and it was put forward by his attorney, who was the previous Intelligence Community Inspector General, the first one. And so, like, there's essentially there's a serious argument that this has happened. So, an entity, again, military industrial complex more broadly, we could say aerospace companies like Lockheed, Raytheon, has subverted our democracy, right? Because they're supposed to, because they're using our money, right? They're supposed to be able to go and audit this stuff, and they couldn't because they kept it in a private corporation intentionally away from prying eyes, right? So they're siphoning our money away. So, yeah.
Okay, so my answer is no. To everything you just said, my answer is no. That is the function of representative democracy. You can say what they should be doing or what you want them to be doing, but representatives, because they are representatives, they can use the power that we've given them in a multitude of ways, including handing over their responsibility and oversight of the development of military weapons to big companies, right? If we decided that we didn't like that that certain behavior, we could use our democratic power, because we still have democratic power. That is fundamentally what's at stake here, to elect politicians who are more responsible with their oversight of military equipment.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and just start the clock for the 15 minutes. It is your time to talk. Just keep going as you will.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, fair enough. But I guess, again, more specifically, they found that they have intentionally cordoned this stuff away, and they've been unable to do so. So I think, again, well, let's flesh this out a little bit more, though. So you're saying that this isn't a problem at all, more broadly. Like, I guess I want to dig deeper into what you
Well,
believe
hold
here.
on.
Yeah.
My point is that this isn't specifically, we're using specific words. This isn't a subversion of democracy. If it is a problem, if it is something that we don't like, then it is important to call it out, because we still have the ability to say that we don't want things like this, and then therefore vote out congressmen and senators and vote in new ones who are going to hold our values.
Right, but I mean, but that's beside the point, I guess, at this point, because
That's absolutely the point.
well, yeah, well, no, it is, but the democracy is still functioning here. The issue, though, the word subversion implying, though, that like the institution effectively has been hollowed out. It's incapable of doing that, though, right? That's what we're getting at.
I I would say that I disagree with the premise that the institution is no longer able to manage military contracts. If it so wanted to, if it
No, that's not
changed
what I
its
said, though.
mind,
Yeah, no, that's not
right,
what I
right,
said, though.
okay, then
Right, yeah, no,
then
yeah, no,
then
again,
at this
yeah, no,
point,
yeah, yeah, and
then
obviously
at
I'm
this
bringing
point,
up, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
then at this point, all we're talking about is whether or not it does a certain job to a level that we're happy with. Whether or not it's, because we get what we found out is that they are giving away contracts to where they no longer have the ability to exert oversight. Well, we would functionally have the same situation if they were to maintain the ability to have oversight, and they just weren't doing their job. They just weren't, like, they were just being lazy about it, right? We wouldn't call that a subversion of democracy. Um, and so, yeah, that's all we're talking. We're talking about
But
whether or not they're doing a job to the extent that we are happy with.
Yes, but the process of them getting to the point where they cordoned this stuff off away from all prying eyes, right, which they should not have done, was a subversion by big money of our democratically elected representatives. Now, you agree with that? I mean,
How
obviously,
is it a
we can get
subversion?
into huh? Well, how?
How,
What do you mean? Sorry.
what's this? What is it subverting? Because it's not
Well,
subverting
these
our elections or anything.
no. It's subverting our ability to audit them. Right. It's subverting
Our
our
ability.
ability to hold them accountable because they took our money and now they've cordoned themselves off because they're private industry. These programs have been
I mean,
cordoned away from our very powerful elected representatives, or at least I'm Canadian, you guys are American, but at least I think most of you are the American representatives, like the Gang of Eight, right? So that's the
right,
testimony. And again, was this the best thing to bring up? Probably not, but I did anyway because it's a meme. That's what I usually talk about. But this is just an
right,
example I brought up because again, democracy is subverted by big money interest. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, the 2008 financial crisis is another better example I could have brought up. You could bring up big pharma. You could bring up the recent debacle with pesticides. I mean, you're saying, like, more generally, is all of it literally been compromised and subverted? But like, these are instances
well,
of
I
big
would
money
accept.
subverting us. I think is what I'm trying to say.
I would accept. I'm not going to be dogmatic. I would accept a
Mm.
definition or like an example that shows that it's less legitimate. That there's some process with our elections that make it less representative. I gave an example, which is if a certain percentage of the population wasn't allowed to vote, that could be argued as a subversion of democracy, right? Um, but I
But
want
by
to.
big money
We
interests, though, like what have the big money? How have the big money
well,
interests subverted democracy here?
that's my point.
How
Is
haven't
that
they?
that has nothing to do with that? How haven't they? Well, I
How
mean, I
haven't
can go
they
to your example.
subverted the democratic process? Though, explain to me how they haven't done though. Right?
So how
That's what you're
haven't
arguing,
they?
right?
How haven't they? Well, I mean, it's hard to prove a
Mm.
negative, but I'll try. Because every choice that an elected official makes in like favor of corporation or industry or billionaires is a decision that we've
Mm.
allowed them to make by electing that individual into place. We still have our ability, because we live in a representative democracy, we have our
Mm.
ability to choose which politicians we put into place. And if the politicians that we elect, that we choose, that we want to represent us, are in favor of corporations, then that's not a subversion. That is the democracy performing its function.
So
By
lobbying
by
isn't subversion now. You're saying that if they're lobbied, that's they're not being subverted, right?
lobbying
But and
isn't
you'd expand
subverted.
that out. So if they were to lobby somebody, I'll give you an example, right? So in regards to this example I brought up around UAPs, if this happens all the time, if like Mark Turner, for people from my chat know, if an aerospace company were to give somebody a fat check for like $200,000, say, Mike, don't worry about this and that over here, we've had it for a while, just don't worry about how we got it or why it's here, why you can't see what it is, right? Do you not think that's a problem though with the democratic process more generally? If that's going on, right? Is democracy functioning as it should? I understand your point that we could just get rid of this guy, and we did, and you guys did in the States. You voted that guy out because that actually happened,
Exactly.
right? And yes, so but that's still big money. This is how I interpreted the question: subverting democracy, right? It's still, I think, problematic. It can be It
I
can be
mean,
very problematic, right?
if we're talking about like big money subverting the political process or big money
Mm.
having influence on the political process, then I might even
Mm-hmm.
literally agree with you. But you literally
Yeah.
showed why that isn't the case, because
How?
if it is a problem in a broader sense that
Mm-hmm.
he accepted this lobbying and made policy based on that, or accepted basically bribe money to pass a certain form of a policy, then we can just vote him out, and we did. And your question, well, is that how democracy is supposed to work? Is that democracy working as it's supposed to? Yes, it exactly is. Okay,
I think we've got to get
our
back
decision
to.
to,
Sorry, and not to interrupt.
yeah,
We get back to the
go
actual
ahead.
question itself, though, right? About like democracy is subverted by big money interests. So, my interpretation here is like democracy has been. Here's an example, right? So I think you're trying to say, can democracy, maybe this is how it should be interpreted to begin with, does democracy as a political system, can it be subverted? Is it subverted by big money interests? But I think I'm interpreting it has, and I guess we'd have to go back to Radish here. How did you want us to interpret this? Like it like literally has democracy been subverted by big money interests, or are you just saying like democracy more broadly is subverted by big money? Because I brought up an example, I should say, of an incident where like it has been right where we were unable to hold these individuals accountable essentially, and they took our money. So that's the whole Grush meme, right? So yeah.
Can I just want to make a comment on I had a comment on that. Basically, your problem is that we lost the ability to hold these companies accountable for like the arms that they're producing, like what they're doing with their contract, oversight, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
My point, and I would stand strongly on this, and this is this falls within like what democracy is supposed to be, because we don't have democratized economies. We as a voting population don't have, it is not within our purview or ability to hold directly companies accountable, besides whether or not we buy their products. This isn't relevant. It is not within our purview, especially for something like Lockheed Martin, to hold them accountable. It is within our purview to hold our elected officials specifically accountable. And so what we do is through our representatives, we decide, are they managing these military contracts properly, right? If they aren't doing these things, or if Lockheed Martin makes some huge blunder because of the way that they're managing their military contracts, then all we can do is hold our elected officials accountable by not voting for them. And that, again, that is still within our abilities. Nothing has been subverted.
I fundamentally disagree, because again, I guess define for me big money. Who's big money to you?
I mean, big money is any entity with like a substantial amount of money, like in the millions, or who is spending in the millions on influencing politics, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying though that if an aerospace company were to take recovered goods and cordon them off from the eyes of the Gang of Eight in Congress, who typically is supposed to go and audit all these different programs, and they cordon off within their own private corporation, knowing full well they can't get access to it for that very reason. And this is the other part, obviously, somebody within, at some point, the government and within Congress, worked on allowing that to happen. The framework was set up actually by Bush in the early 90s, Bush Sr. But you don't think that's a problem, though? Like, you don't think that's a subversion, though? Like, that's a hollowing out of the institution's ability to hold these corporations accountable. We're obviously, like, this is the other part of it, too. Like, we're funding these programs, right? These programs are being funded by the people. So if the people aren't able, through our representatives, to hold these corporations accountable with our stuff, you don't think that's a subversion of the democratic process?
Not the democratic process, no. It might be a subversion of the congressional process or the political process, whatever.
Well, but more broadly, like, democracy isn't really functioning very well at that point, right? Our representatives they're not able to do their job, right? That's the point I guess I was getting at more broadly, right?
The democratic process is still working perfectly fine, because we still have
You mean in terms of voting? You mean in terms of voting?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Democracy that's more broadly. Yeah, that's where we're kind of getting off the rails a little bit. Our democracy right now. Well, no, but I guess we're getting into like the definition of like our current democracy has, and this is what Radish, you want to chime in here. Are you saying with this question, has our democracy been subverted by big money interests? Was that what you wanted us to get on about?
So I actually kind of let you guys go at it and let you guys sort it out. I will clarify, though, that my notes show that you guys agreed that representative democracy was the definition of democracy. And so you guys are making very interesting points on the same idea from different angles. I'm interested to see you guys keep at it, because you're doing exactly what I want. So continue.
okay, yeah, fair enough. And I would say that our representatives have been subverted, though, right? Right, Hammer, in this
Well,
regard. That's the point I brought up. The representatives have been subverted, right? They've been hollowed.
Specifically,
They've been hollowed out, right? Their ability to audit these programs has been intentionally they've been intentionally obfuscated away from them, so they're incapable of actually doing their job. That's my point, I guess.
specifically, I know this is what you're saying, but like specifically, they haven't from outside sources had their ability to do their jobs stripped from them. They've intentionally like given up their own abilities to do their job, right?
No, 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 no.
And
Well, no, but they haven't though. They haven't. Some essentially the corporations have, through lobbying at some point, been able to get this stuff allocated away from prying eyes. Essentially, right? That's if that, and we could get deeper into this. I don't want to go off into that right this second, but like that's essentially the argument, I should say. Right. So you don't
sure,
think that
but
that's a subversion of our democratic representatives?
well, hold on. But still, fundamentally, Congress did what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? They did consent to all these actions of Lockheed Martin, all these companies, all these hiding of information, right?
Someone did, but is that a
Someone
subversion
did.
of what? Well, yeah, I know, but
Wait,
like
wait. Who's the
you're
someone?
speaking more broadly. Well, but I said somebody at some point was lobbied by one of these aerospace companies, and this is what we don't know specifically who this may be. But within this established framework, they were able to cordon this off away from prying eyes. So somebody lobbied against one of these representatives, right? Or lobbied, sorry, with one of these representatives. They lobbied one of these representatives to allow for this to happen, right? And that subverted the process more broadly, right? Because the other elected representatives, part of the Gang of Eight, should have been able to go and access and audit these things. And they had no idea this was happening, obviously, until Grush had testified that, oh, this shouldn't exist. They're doing all these things. They're doing all this. Well, he claims reverse engineering. We're not getting into the alien question right now again, but they're doing all kinds of things that they shouldn't be doing. How did this ever happen, right? And it happened because the military-industrial complex, again, what Eisenhower warned about 80 plus years ago, was that they would do just this, right? They would subvert our ability to hold them accountable. So that's what my definition of subversion in democracy, representative democracy, and our ability to hold these things accountable. That's where I'm coming at this from. So I don't understand your disagreement with that, though. But I think we may be a bit of time. Sorry.
We are actually. So I know I had said that we were going to try something different tonight and go straight to the closings and then to the Q&A instead of what we usually do, which is the Q&A and then the closings. I can't wait. I want to get our questions out there. So we're going to go ahead and go to the judges real quick. The way this works is we're going to give each of us, me and each of the two judges, has a question that we get to ask to the debaters, to each debater. We're going to start with the AF. You're going to get 3 questions. Plus, now is the time, chatters. If you guys click that link, if you want to put anything in to the tip jar, you can throw a question at the debaters as well on this one. But we're going to go through the affirmative, then we're going to go through the negative, then we're going to give you guys the opportunity to do your closings, then we're going to go to judgment. So that's it. Judges, I hope you guys are getting ready with a good question. I'm going to start out, and I'm actually going to ask the question to both of you, so I guess you kind of get a little bit more time to be prepared here, Hammer. Because what was happening there was one of you was arguing that if representatives are not representing the people, then they have been subverted. The other was representing or was arguing that if they're able to be taken out of office once they've been subverted, then democracy is still functioning. So my question first to you, Jim, is from his side. We're just pulling apart the onion. From your opposition side, do you agree that some level of the democratic process continues even if you believe the representatives have been themselves subverted?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That was easy. Then in that case,
I can elaborate on that. If you like.
You got a minute on the clock, so go ahead.
Yeah. I think like we get back to like the definition of subversion, the word we're using here to describe this. I mean, it's what I've got up here, it's a hollowing out of the institution's substance, right? So it's still preserving its outward form. The machinery's still running, right? But effectively, what's happened is they're not able to perform their duty the way they should be doing, or it's not running at 100%, right? And that's fundamentally the issue.
And
Yeah.
if big money interest use their money to, say, influence the population into voting for one candidate, is that considered a subversion of the democratic system?
That's a good question. I mean, what's the intention? I guess there maybe, but it's lobbying. Personally, for me, is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. Yeah, you've a conflict of interests there. It's obviously because what you're supposed to be representing is the people, but then obviously you've got to keep in mind your buddy there who sent you $2 million, right? So, like for me personally, I think I have a problem with that in democracy. I think that it's a huge problem in democracy. For me personally, like in terms of like how democracy should function, I think lobbying is a huge problem. So I think that could be a serious issue. Yeah.
All right, Lethe, ready for you, sir. If you got need, so it's just going to take him a second.
Within
You
this
got that question, or you want him to repeat it?
No, I think I got it.
All right, go ahead.
Are Leafy, you trying to say that like should the people, the individuals that are digging into this should be responsible? Like, I guess clarify slightly. I guess say that again just so I can properly address it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. It was, yeah. So I we need to be really clear on the definition of subversion too. Like the definition of subversion here isn't destruction of democracy, right? The definition of subversion would imply like capture again. It's a capture, right? So the institution's still running. It's just either running for someone else or not running as it should. And my point with bringing up Grush's testimony relevant to the AP stuff I talk about was fundamentally it's an example of some of these special access programs, right? Not running for the benefit of the people, which are who are paying for them, but they're running for the benefit of these aerospace corporations, right? And they've done this intentionally so they don't have, your elected representative bob in his head and be like, oh yeah, that's for the people, right? Like, oh yeah, no, like, but they're doing it simply. They're doing that because they just want to make money, right? Like they care less about benefiting anybody other than themselves. I don't know that obviously, but like that's the problem when you don't have that kind of transparency when you're using people's money to run these special access programs, and the chain of custody is just a mess, and you've intentionally obfuscated it, right? That's effectively it. Sorry, yeah, if that answers your question.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah.
We'll save those for the after party. So, looking over at you now, Hammer. I'm going to ask basically the same question, but in reverse. So, while if we're willing to acknowledge that there is a difference between the Democratic Republic and the Democratic representation, do you agree that the if the representatives who have been elected are not representing their constituency, that they have then been corrupted and have been subverted, that the will of the people has been subverted if the representatives are not representing the people? I think I asked that the right way. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my main focus, quick answer, no, I don't agree with that. My main focus is on the function of democracy, right? Democracy as a process, and according to the process of democracy, not only is it our job to, because democracy, what it does is it puts a certain responsibility on the civilian population, and it is our responsibility not only to elect people who and policies that match our like whose stated interests match ours. It is also our responsibility to look at the character, to look at the competency and effectiveness of our candidates, and choose the one who's most likely to perform the best. And so if a politician becomes corrupted or does some illegal stuff or ends up faithless in their policies, it is because we didn't do enough work to investigate them.
Okay. Go ahead and heading over to you, Game Boy. Question for Hammer, please, when you're ready, sir.
Okay, this is kind of building off of the last two questions, so maybe a little long. Do you agree with Jim's definition of subversion as capture? And do you agree that if the capture of our congressional representative systems, that in turn is a compromise and subversion of our democratic system? Do you need me to repeat that?
So So yeah, no. I would say that maybe like capture is as a definition for subversion, generally maybe, depending on your definition of capture. I already conceded that that like you don't have to completely dismantle the democratic process, but you have to prove some level of illegitimacy within the democratic process. So if the democratic process worked perfectly fine and as intended, until something or someone was elected, and then once that person is elected, they then become quote unquote subverted. That's not an issue with the democratic process. That's a issue with the political process, which we have voted in.
Okay. And Lethe, your turn, sir. If you have a question ready for Hammer, please.
Yes.
Go ahead and pull that out a little more. Expound.
Is it yeah, it like I said, it is our responsibility as citizens to elect the most effective and efficient politician for whatever goals that we want to have done, and it is solely the responsibility of elected officials to perform actions which will get them elected again. That is the point of democracy. That is the motivation structure of democracy. Is that the only reason as to why they would do one thing or another is so that they can get votes in the future. There is no function outside to, or I mean, there's the law, what is it? Impeachment to get them out. But other than that, there's no function to make them be the most virtuous in their office if that doesn't get them votes.
All right. Very good stuff. All right, gentlemen. So we're going to go ahead and go to your closings now. I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock for each of you. We'll start with you, Jim. This is your time to closing arguments, closing thoughts, put a cherry on top. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Yes. Well, I don't know if we made any ground. I guess maybe some. I'm not particularly satisfied, I guess, in the end with where it ended, but I guess maybe our definition of subversion maybe wasn't the same. But yeah, listen, I mean, thank you, though, guys, for Radish and everyone else for having me on to have this conversation. Obviously, I appreciate anybody critically thinking about this and any back and forth, too. Right. That's why I do this kind of thing, which is to try to get to objective truths, which is fundamentally philosophy, right? Is trying to get to like, what is the objective truth here, right? I'm accusing, I'm not saying Hammer did this, but, not employing, as you had stated earlier on, like when you started this, employing rhetoric to win. That's not why we're here. We're here just to get to what is the objective truth, right? And I think I've laid out my case that the democratic system has been subverted by a specific group of individuals, the military-industrial complex. Case that the democratic system has been subverted by a specific group of individuals, the military-industrial complex, and there's a strong argument I think that exists that it has been, and so I'll just kind of leave that there, maybe, dude. And thank you so much for having me.
All right, cheers. And in that case, we're going to go ahead and go over to you now, Hammer. 3 minutes is on the clock for your closing, sir. Let us hear it.
It is important to be specific about the things that we are talking about. The subjects and the arguments that we make should be very specific. I don't feel as though my opponent really talked about what we are here to talk about, in my opinion, which is the democratic process. Democracy is the process by which we elect officials to represent us and pass policy and perform actions that we would like them to pass. It is anything that they do while they are in office is maybe technically a downstream result of democracy, but that is not democracy itself, right? um we haven't really gone into any reasons as to why the democratic process would have been subverted. It is working perfectly as fine. In every instance when it came up, my opponent pretty much conceded that it does work. We do have the complete and full ability to elect who and whatever we want. um Again, barred behind our represented democracy, and that he hasn't given a single example as to any reason why we would lose that ability, or that ability would be somewhat mitigated. And without that, any examples of that, we just do not pass the definition of a subversion of democracy. It is that simple. So vote for me, please. And that is my closing statement.
All right. All right. So, Jim, absolutely great job. Thank you very much for giving us your time for that debate. Hammer, great job as always. It was definitely fun to watch. I did not expect that to be the angle this was going to go, and I was really fucking pleased to see it play out. But I don't get a vote. This is going to be in the hands of the judges first, but I'm also going to drop here into the chat as promised. That link right there is going to get you to the ability to vote on who you think made the most persuasive case tonight. Do you believe that it was Jim Russell on the affirmative, or do you believe that it was Mr. Hammer on the negative? We're going to go to our judges first. Our judges render their judgment. Then we go to the audience. So you guys have a few minutes to get those votes locked in while we hear what Game Boy and Lethe have to say. Game Boy, you're up first. Are you ready to give us your judgment?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Where did you land on this?
I had it 2-8 for the negative. I
Okay.
thought the opening was strong from Jim, and I didn't have any problems with it. But I felt like it was just like 1 point dragged out through the entire debate, which I could have seen more of. I thought Hammer's cross was probably the best part of the debate, as he kind of slowly outlines his opening through that cross and points out the small differences between him and Jim. And I think the saving grace for Hammer was that he specifically outlines subversion through votes being illegitimate candidates or policies were not voted for that should have won, and populations being barred. And I think that not being addressed at all during the cross-ex um, really helped everything throughout the debate, and it made the open discussion seem like there was points Hammer made that were never fully addressed. And every time Jim made some concession, like, yeah, democracy is still working this way, or democracy is still working in that way, and then specifically pointing out like how Congress's abilities aren't being addressed, or how representatives don't have the full power. While that was strong in any other debate, since Hammer already was able to put out a definition of what subversion was so early on, it didn't seem to matter, even if it was what I thought was a very strong point that Hammer never fully addressed. Hammer just always seemed like he had the upper hand throughout the entire debate because he already laid out all his definitions and everything he meant, that I don't think Jim could have possibly ever addressed in full.
All right. So 2828 for the opposition, for Hammer, for the negative. Lethe, it is now your turn, sir. I hope you land on this. You are still muted, my friend.
He could just not do that, bro.
He can't not, but
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
okay. 4-6 for Hammer. All right, so we're still going to go ahead and look and see what the audience voted. I'm going to tell both of my judges right now that you guys are going to fight me in the after party on this one because I disagree with your judgments, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, that's just because he used you a vote.
No, it is not.
UFOs.
But it did help.
That's just
But
because
it
he
is
used
not the fucking reason. I will trust me. You'll hear my arguments in just about an hour. So, anyways, all right. So, one more time, thank you very, very much, Russell. I hope you stick around for the after party and for the other debates. Hammer, great job. Looks like everybody voted for you. That was wrong. And so, yeah. So, with that said, it looks like we are now able to go on to our first scheduled debate, which is going to be between Grufus and Razor. The prompt being all juries should be made up of judges, not peers. So, with that said, you guys both are regulars and Razor. Here. You know exactly what the prompt we're doing. Being all juries should be made up of judges, not peers. So, with that said, you guys both are regulars here. You know exactly what we're doing. I've got 3 minutes on the clock for you, Grufus. It is awesome to get to keep seeing your face, Buddy Row. So start us off whenever you're ready. Let us have it.
All right. A peer jury is a group of random citizens, no legal training, picked by lottery, forced to serve under the threat of punishment, who decide a case, then vanish with zero accountability. And judges are professionals who are systemically trained and they are accountable decision makers. I believe professional jurors also fall under judges. These are people who choose this job, get paid, receive real training on evidence and law, handle many cases, and are accountable for their work. And it also includes judge panels, usually 3 or more experienced judges who hear the full case together, deliberate as a group, catch each other's mistakes, and write out the reasoning, and have every single decision reviewed on appeal. This already is how many serious cases are handled in many other countries. Both are better options than the status quo in America. This debate comes down to really one question. Does professionalism produce better legal decisions? I would say, and the evidence would say, yes. Judges are trained and well educated on legal practices, and it has been found through studies regarding the subject that juries often fall into traps involving core fundamentals, like weighing evidence and personal feelings involving the case. Think about the stakes, right? We are giving citizens, these random citizens who are untrained, the power to send someone to prison for life, or even possibly impose the death penalty. One bad verdict can destroy a life or family forever, and I believe this is reckless. Razor may raise judicial bias as a point, but yes, individual judges have bias, and that's exactly why I am advocating for judge panels. Multiple judges from different backgrounds check each other, deliberate together, and research shows they can actively correct for blind spots. Random juries have no such safeguards. We're forcing people with no preparation to make the most serious decision in our justice system. We can do better. The evidence shows we can. The question is whether we should. I think we should.
All right.
And I can give you my sources for the sources I mentioned also if you want.
For sure. If you want to just drop them in the Discord channel, if Fraser needs me to, I can bring them up for him. But for now, 3 minutes is on the clock. Go ahead, Razor, whenever you are ready, sir. Cross-examination. And you are muted.
So me and Lethe are friends. We do the same thing. Sorry. Okay. Do you know the amount of judges we have in this in our system currently?
Not offhand. No.
Okay. Do you
Do you know? Do you know?
I do. It's approximately 31,000 judges across the country, both
Okay.
federal and state in each state. Do you have some sort of plan? Do you have some sort of idea of how we could do jury panels filled with nothing but judges without
What?
any kind of clogging of the system?
Right. So, like I said earlier, we could also do professional juries, which they don't necessarily need to be judges in the more colloquial sense of, sitting judges. They could be people who have been trained on this and whatnot. And I just include them under the definition of judges I said earlier because I think they fall more neatly under judge. Professional juries fall more neatly under judge than do a peer, because I would say a peer is
So
something more like
So you're not saying that they need to have like expert legal training to be a quote
no,
judge, in your opinion?
no, they should have expert legal training. I'm just saying they don't need to be a judge specifically.
Like they
In
don't
the
have to have
colloquial
been
sense.
appointed.
In the colloquial sense. Sorry?
So you're thinking like more lawyers that add more lawyers because most lawyers become judges, right?
Well, most judges have been lawyers. I don't know if I
Yeah.
would be I wouldn't I don't know if
Most
judges
most judges have been lawyers. Sorry, I meant to say it that way. I apologize. That was my flip up on that one.
Yep.
But so you would probably want, so you're thinking lawyers instead of judges. You're thinking lawyers when we don't have enough judges, and
As a
but not any of the peers.
right, you can somewhat say something like that as like a perhaps a stepping stone. I do think judge panels, like how SCOTUS works or how especially how appellate court works in the US, is a better system than the current bottom ranked courts, so to speak.
Do you believe that diversity of communities can help make cases a little bit easier to judge?
I don't know if I quite understand your question. Do you mean like
I
diversity of thought
apologize.
within the do you mean like diversity of thought within the judges?
Jury box. Do you believe that helps more than hinders when it comes to court cases?
I think it's probably about neutral when it comes to the status quo. I would say it's probably a net benefit when it comes to my system.
All right. So we're now going to go ahead and go over 3 minutes to you, Razor, for your opening. Go ahead and start the clock when you start to talk.
I apologize for how rushed this sounds. I scrambled everything back together as soon as I got home. Okay. There are approximately About 31,000 judges. The overall over number, it could be nearly 32K. In America right now, in contrast to the 342.6 million people in this country. A judge may see hundreds or even thousands of cases a year, each case lasting from some minutes to days or even longer. With this in mind and the notoriously long-standing shortages of judges, there's a danger of overloading them with even more than they already are, and a risk of even greater backing up of the court system if we were to give them this new thing to do for every jury duty case. The right to a jury of peers can actually empower people to shield defendants from excessive abuse of those in power, especially in cases of racial prejudice. In states like Alabama, where 35% of the population is black, all 19 appellate judges are white. There are similar statistics that apply in other states, and at a federal level, this applies to judges that have a significant population of people of color. Jury service gives community perspective that would be unavailable if judges were the only ones on the jury. Let's be sure that we also remember that only about 23% of Americans even trust judges to decide verdicts fairly. A jury of peers is our democratic guardrail that we cannot afford to remove. All it leads to is more minorities jailed for crimes they did not commit, or even more possible even more possible harm in the future for anyone who does not look like what the judges look like. And we can go from there.
All right. So now, 3 minutes is on the clock for you, Rufus. Cross-examine, sir. You are muted, Rufus.
God damn it.
We've
Sorry.
all done it. We've all done it.
I apologize.
You're good.
All right. Where did I put my questions? All right. So are you were, just to make this clear, you were advocating for these to keep the status quo, right, Razor?
When it comes to jury duty, it is the most effective way to get us is the most effective way that we have to get clear, clean verdicts for any kind of jury duty cases.
So essentially,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And these citizens have no background in, usually have no background in law or legal reasoning, right?
Usually, because people can't all
Yeah,
afford to buy to go to school to learn every
Right.
single aspect of the law.
Right. Not like you can have attorneys end up being in a jury box, but usually not happening.
Yeah. It can happen, but just it's rare.
Do you believe that medical expertise improves patient outcomes?
If the one with the medical expertise is the one doing the
Right.
medical thing, yeah, obviously.
Would you accept treatment from someone with no medical training if they were randomly selected from the community?
I feel like we're about
You'll
to
see.
reach into a category error, but
You'll see where I'm going with this.
can you repeat it one more time? I apologize.
Would you accept treatment from someone with no medical training if they were randomly selected from the community?
I would probably ask, do they at least know CPR or how to stabilize someone? But
No medical training.
on average,
No medical
but
training.
like on average, I'd probably say, can I get like a doctor, or can you or call someone to help you do a thing?
All right. Why is evaluating forensic evidence, probabilistic reasoning, and legal standards any different from any other skilled professional judgments?
I might be misunderstanding that question. Could you?
So essentially, why are you applying a different standard for the medical field to the legal field?
Because with the medical field, they are majority of the time will have some majority of the time, like I said, you can you can end up calling, say, 911, and that person who doesn't have medical training can be pushed through to how to stabilize someone. Like a 911 operator who does have medical training on the other end will tell someone how you do compressions, how to possibly get a tourniquet onto someone, how to make sure that they're okay. So it's someone leading them down the right path, which is why we have lawyers, by the way, when it comes to the judicial system. The lawyers are battling with a defendant and prosecutor to be sure that the jury understands all of the evidence that has been gathered by said forensic teams uh, and the prosecutor and defense, and they battle it out, showing like, hey, he's guilty because of this, or he's not guilty because of this. That's why juries aren't just like, here's what he did, do you say guilty or not guilty. They go through sometimes up to 2 to 3 weeks at the I've seen a month before
Right.
of a jury trial where day in day out lawyers will show the jury, like, here's everything that he is accused of, and here's the evidence to show that he did do it, versus here's the evidence to show that they're lying or that they're wrong.
All right. So
We are in the open field, so just keep on going.
right. So
Oh, cool. Question.
okay, so you're cool with another question. Then if judges make a poor decision, can that decision be reviewed on appeal?
Every judgment, even good ones, can be brought up on appeal if a defendant doesn't like the outcome.
Right. So if a jury reaches a verdict, can the factual reasoning behind that verdict be reviewed? Usually.
Yes. Yes, it would be the same
Yeah.
under
Yes.
the system you're thinking of. But yeah, so like, yeah.
Right. So I'm more so saying, like, if they let, like, when actually I won't bring OJ up. Um, as I'm not gonna quite go there.
Bring the juice. No, I'm kidding. No, it's fine. No,
um,
I think I know what you're thinking about with
yeah,
that one.
I got yeah,
Unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, the as some people have as one of the not cases, as a common conception is stated, the justice system would rather let 1,000 guilty go free before they
right. I
sentence
know.
one
Yeah,
innocent man.
right, and I don't
So
disagree with that, but
in
um,
either system, in either the
in
status
either
quo
system,
system
you're
that
gonna
I'm
have
saying
false
we need to
positives.
keep, and yours, it'll happen. Yeah.
Right. There'll be false positives in either system. You're
Yep.
still dealing with humans. So
Yep.
I actually would like to turn to your safeguarding minorities point, if we can. Um, I would say that I think we both agree that having a diverse range of thoughts, right, are good things within the judicial system, right?
Yes.
All right, so and I think that having a diverse judge panel, right, who is trained in these judicial proceedings, the judicial law, would provide more protection to minority communities. Because, for example, when a judge makes a biased decision, that reasoning is on record, it's visible, challengeable to appeal, and it's correctable. When an anonymous jury makes a biased verdict, uh, there is there's not always actual reasoning to scrutinize. Like they can
the the
that's what I was
biggest
talking.
issue,
That's just trying to
the
more
biggest
so off what.
issue the, the biggest issue with what you're talking about here is that while yes, a judge is more knowledgeable in the law, and can possibly end up with a more uh quote coherent, or uh even more judicial reasoning behind why they have put a verdict in, and not just a this sounds correct because the lawyer put it into the timeline perfectly. Is that with the prejudice that we're talking about is very subconscious. I have to. I did not. I didn't get a chance to grab this particular data point. I can Google it and in the after party and show it off. But there's a case to be made whenever someone does not. When someone looks like you're able to hear them out a lot better. When they don't look like you, there's obviously that subconscious thought of like, well, they don't look like me, so why should I even think about that? It's like it's not actively being discriminatory or actively being racist. It's just your brain does not compute that this person is another human like me. It for some reason sees someone who looks different and says enemy.
Right.
So
Right.
and like
So
as I said in Alabama, with 35% of the population being black, but all of their appellate judges being white, uh, and how the South kind of is, those white judges, even if they say that they're not racist, there's some subconscious shit going on in them where they will, as you probably know, the statistics, black men are uh, disproportionately punished, harsher with harsher sentences, even though a white man doing the exact same crime with the exact same background gets much less than what he would get in time. You you know about that statistic, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. And I also, for example, know about the statistic that uh, I don't remember if it's more or about the same or less, but men also get a harsher treatment than women on average. So the longest
That one's due to sexism, weirdly enough, and it's but that's a
so
that
to speak, reverse sexism. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
So
patriarchal systems, sexism. It's a weird thing.
right.
It would have that'd be an entire different debate.
Right. No, so and I would like to come back around to the your judicial prejudice point. Good lord, I can't speak sometimes. Um, um, so one of these sources I cited earlier showed that measure implicit um did show some implicit racial bias, but when explicitly told to be aware of that race might be influencing judges, um, there was no statistically significant implicit bias in their decision, and explicit racial attitudes did not predict racial disparities in sentencing. Like I said, this is one of these sources I posted in the
yeah.
what do you call it, in the side chat. This would
Okay.
be the Rachlinsky. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but um, this would be the inside the judicial mind is this the name of the study.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Radish, do you want me to Radish, would you like me to also post that in the
If you'd like,
chat?
I can bring
Chat?
it up.
Right. I don't have the specific part of the study pulled up on the moment. At the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, just
But yes,
drop it in the Twitch chat then.
So let's say we do the thing that you're talking about with putting judges inside of juries. As I stated, the number of people and cases that are happening, there are things that are happening, cases that are happening on a daily, yearly. The amount of cases a judge will take on yearly. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes astronomical, to where they don't even get most of their docket done by the end of the year. They end up with even more later on, even more than they started with at the beginning of the year sometimes. Um, what time do you think they end up having to sit and for a possible 10-day jury trial, like to be able to do that thing? That's for like the judiciary we currently talk about, and I'm also talking about with, say, public defenders and even private lawyers who have dozens of cases that they're working all at once.
Right. So essentially, I think just to directly address the more practical argument, I suppose, of yours that
Mhm.
for the 31,000 judges, right? I don't think that the existing amount of judges is necessarily relevant to the principle, um, and professional jurors don't necessarily need to be licensed, though they should have training, right? Um,
So
and
you're
they need
so you're
they
one
need professional
what you're
accountability. That pool
so
would
what
be
you're
much
actually
bigger than
saying is
31,000.
so then what you're actually saying that what you're actually talking about is you're wanting like a jury to be a job where you have to go get this legal training to be part of a jury.
That is, I would say, the preferential stepping stone until we can get um until we can get more judges. But yes.
Okay. I don't think I can fully agree with that. I do because again, it would end up coming down to we'd have to fix a lot of like current systemic issues with economics and stuff, so that everyone has a chance to take these classes and become more studied in the law.
Sure, and that's
So
another
that we
practical
do
issue,
have a
though, right? It's
more
not necessarily.
yeah, exactly. It would end up being a more we would need a more educated populace in a way, and I'm for that,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, I think we both are.
But
We're
yeah,
educating
very
people
much
more.
so. Yep. Uh, but right now, with what we currently have and what would be good in will be good in the future, sticking with our peers, the people in the community, which is always going to be better. Grabbing those 16 people and then having I forget the term. There's a very specific term. I think someone put arbitration, but that's not the right term for it. It's the section. It's the time when they're picking the jurors. There's a very specific word for it. I was part of it for a hot second. They'll pick
I should know.
16
I should
people.
know this.
Yeah, same. It's like they'll pick 16 people, summon them, and then the two
Jury
judges will
selection.
ask questions to each
It's
of
just
the.
called jury
Yeah,
select.
it's
It's just
jury
called jury
selection.
selection.
It's just called jury. I thought there was a specific term for it.
No, I don't. I think it's just
But
jury
yeah,
selection.
in jury selection, they will ask the 16 people like, "Hey, these many questions." They'll voir dire, thank you. They will and narrow it down after asking many questions like, can you be unbiased, can you be rational, is there any reason why you can't possibly do this. They'll say, hey, you're this, they'll say like, hey, you have this on your record, possibly, is will this affect you, and under penalty of perjury, obviously, you'll answer yes, no, or you don't know, and a one of the lawyers for either the defense or the prosecutor can go, yeah, nah, get him out of here, and the reserves will replace that person that they got rid of. So voir dire is a part of this our system that we currently have of the 12 jury members, uh, which is a way to make sure that you do have that community aspect. So you have more, you have a better chance at a fair trial because you're not being looked down by possible prejudice from someone who thinks they're a lot smarter, which they are by
I mean, they're more
technicality they
educated.
are, but
They're
they're
more educated, right?
exactly.
Right.
Yes, but then there's that
So
weird. But then again, there's that prejudice of like, there's the chance that we're not gonna with the in Alabama with the 19 appellate judges being white to a 35% population of black. Anyone who's black there might not get a fair trial due to possible prejudices that even those judges don't know they have due to some subconscious nonsense going on with them.
right. No. So I mean, I'm just gonna first just re-invoke the study I said earlier.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'm going to for the I guess you could call it your community values argument, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would say those should be reflected in the laws themselves, written possibly by elected legislators or whatever. The role, however, for jurors is to fact find, right? It's to determine whether the evidence meets legal standard, not to import additional community sentiment, I think, into the verdict. Um, and when juries do that, the other study I have, data shows that it produces inconsistent and unreviewable outcomes driven by sympathy more than actual evidence.
No, that like I said, any case can be appealed. Like there have been cases that have been overturned whenever a defendant appealed a jury's verdict because they were able to find out, hey, the jury missed this, or the jury voted in this way, but someone on there didn't actually want to vote that way. There have been mistrials because juries couldn't fully agree because like half and half were constantly butting heads, and then they just did a retrial, possibly with all the same evidence, with a new jury. So while it can end up making the wheels of justice turn slow, it still gets done efficiently and effectively to be sure that justice is served correctly and not prejudicially.
All right.
Right. So,
I'm gonna go ahead and jump on in there. Time's up. Clock's
Okay.
out. So save it for the after party. You know how this works. So all right, fine. Save it for your closing arguments. Then I'm gonna go ahead and go to our judges. We have questions for you guys, I'm sure. I get to go first. Rufus, you're up first.
Hooray.
Your
No.
proposition of a trained jury, which I guess we can call judges, professional jury judge. Yeah, I'm trying to spin it to the prompt for you. But if we had these people, how would we prevent those people from becoming corrupted? If we know that there are trained jurors, we already have enough problems with the corruption of the jurors that get selected. If a person stays in this job long term, how would you be able to guard against them eventually just becoming a juror for hire?
I would say probably somewhat the same way. We prevent them. Prevent it now. There are punishments for bribery. There's punishments for quid pro quo and whatnot, and the same way that there would be the same type of punishments also for judges, right? So you still have punishments if they behave wrong, and I would also fully endorse a background check to try and weed out anyone who would try to infiltrate the system as such as you're describing.
All right, good stuff. Game Boy, your turn, sir. Question for Rufus.
Hey, buddy.
Hi, twin. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. My bad. Do you think that, like you said during the debate, that diversity of people living in a community is comparable to that of forced diversity of ideals through, like you said, the law, I think was what you brought up as a response to that? Do you think that is comparable, or do you think that that is some benefit that you gain from juries that is not necessary for that process?
I think I'm confused by the question.
Yep, that's fine. Go ahead. Try.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Try it one more time for us.
Razor said that juries offer diversity of ideas and backgrounds, and you responded by saying that that diversity can be compensated through law or standard practice in the field. Do you think that is truly comparable, or do you think diversity of ideas and backgrounds is not as important?
I would say they're probably going to end up being about equally important because you still need some sort of safeguard to make sure that you don't have people who infiltrate the system and try to spin their own political or ideological spin their own political or propaganda or ideological beliefs into a court case, if that makes sense.
All right, and Lethe, you're up.
Oop dook. All right, so I think whenever you're looking at a prompt like this, that's kind of not necessarily a complete absolute, but somewhat of an absolute. You should be looking at it through an idealistic way. Excuse me, because people should be living. I think people should be living up to the principle. People should be living up to the ideal that way, instead of trying to fit society into some sort of practical box, so to speak. And for your incentive part, like you create both positive and negative incentives. You have high financial rewards, for example, or you have maybe some social rewards, so to speak, for those professional jurors who do well, who are as objective as a human can be, and then you have consequences for people who don't who are biased. That way, you have as much protection as you can against people uh, who are being biased.
Thanks for that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go over to you, Razor. My question for you first. Would you agree to the concept of jury or bench juries, basically, bench trials? I think that's what they call it when the judge is the
It is
one
a
who's
bench
making
trial,
the
yeah.
decision. Yep. Would you be more agreeable to the concept of bench trials if we were to solve for the representation and the supply? And I bring up the supply because you did say something about the number of judges that it would add to the process.
Mm.
But if you even just three, there's already one judge who's sitting for it already. We would just add two more judges. So if we just hired more judges, we could provide more supply. If we could solve for the supply and representation, would you then agree that a bench trial like that would be better?
Not entirely. The reason why people ask for a jury trial is because there is, even though people don't think there is still a prejudice among the judges due to close connections, possible conflict of interest between the judges. Like, hey, this is my friend, he's my friend, we all agree on the same thing. Even though they'll say that they're impartial, they're unbiased, they will judge fairly. Subconsciously, they will not, because they have a set thing in mind. When you have a complete stranger, like the complete strangers in the jury, their impartiality is almost guaranteed, especially after a voir dire.
Game Boy, a question for Razor, please.
Sorry, I have it written down. Um, do you think that the Supreme Court should be replaced by a jury of our peers around the nation, or do you think the Supreme Court should be made up of a panel of judges? And if you believe the Supreme Court should maintain its status as a panel of judges, why is that the exception?
So jury trials are usually a constitutional right to be sure that you are defended, that you have a good defender and in your lawyer, and you have a chance to face your accusers, so the state, possibly, or a victim that you had. Um, for things like the Supreme Court, those are usually done for laws, not for criminal cases. I'm very with the jury trials. It's always going to be it's majority of the time going to be criminal or civil cases that are for those, not for deciding how laws are interpreted. So the
Right.
Supreme Court can stay how it is.
And Lethe, sir, your turn. A question, please, for Razor.
Hmm? Being sure I'm asking this, and I'm pretty sure I'm answering this correctly. Could you repeat that question a little bit to, like maybe?
Yeah, just please
I
restate,
apologize.
restate and clarify.
So the term jury of their peers has always meant your fellow citizens, people who are on the similar, who would be in a similar boat as you, if they were sitting behind that bench. So if you are a billionaire or or some mogul, rich guy, or whatever, and you finally got caught for all of your crimes, and you were sitting behind that bench, the jury of your peers are all the average citizens who you may have possibly fucked over, which is why the voir dire is so important. Uh, to make sure that we get as many unbiased jury members there that can fairly judge them for the crime that they committed, not for the person that they are.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Okie doke. So we are now going to go ahead and go to our closing arguments. Gentlemen, you're going to be up first, Groofus. 3 minutes is on the clock. I will start the clock when you start to talk.
I've shown that professionalism produces better
clock.
legal decisions.
I will start the clock
Trained judges
when
out.
you start to talk.
I've shown that professionalism produces better legal decisions. Trained judges outperform random lay people on the exact skills that matter: weighing evidence, avoiding statistical traps, resisting emotional bias, right? Then, when judges and juries disagree, it's not because juries are smarter, it's because juries get swayed by sympathy or disagreement with the law. The evidence I presented is clear. Razor raised some practical concerns: 31,000 judges, shortage, backlog. Those are real issues, but it's not a reason to keep forcing untrained citizens into a box, literally and figuratively. Switching to professional jurors or judge panels doesn't require more judges than we have now. It requires better use of trained professionals. Countries like the Netherlands already run on judge-only based systems. We could phase this in. He also said that juries being diverse, having diversity of thought, and bring diversity of thought and commitment to community perspectives. But diversity doesn't require randomness or lack of training. Professional judges and jurors, drawn from different backgrounds, races, genders, life experiences, whatnot, can deliver both diversity and competence. He also at one point claimed that only 23% of Americans trust judges. Anonymous jury verdicts that give no reasons and can't be appealed on the facts don't build trust either. Real trust comes from transparent, reasoned, reviewable decisions. That's exactly what judge panels provide. We also agree that individual judges have bias, and that's documented. But in one of the studies I cited, the research shows that trained judges can and do collect for their blind spots when they are made aware of them. That's why I propose panels. Multiple judges check each other, deliberate together, and create structural awareness of bias. Random lay juries don't have these tools. We are asking unprepared citizens to decide. We're asking unprepared citizens who are forced to be there to decide life imprisonment and the death penalty with zero training and zero accountability. I don't think that's democratic. I think that's reckless. We can honor every legitimate democratic value and deliver better justice. The evidence says we can, and I think it's time we did.
All right, that sounded like you were done. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 minutes on the clock now for you, Razor. Razor, go ahead and give us your closing argument, sir.
So my opponent did bring up some rather interesting ideas. Ones that unfortunately would have over the long term negative effects. With these possible judges in being in the jury's panels, there's a chance for greater collaboration between them. There is a chance for even greater reasoning to be corrupted by some larger source. These many different there's many different chances, or there's way too many ways to break a system like this, especially with our current economic system. Even if we did end up having these trained jurors that would be seen as judges, it would lead to a lot of possible work fatigue. At least with a random summoning of our peers, there is very little chance for someone on the outside to get to the jurors. There is very little chance for the system to shatter entirely or become corrupted. Uh, at least for jury trials, because you never know who the juror is going to be. The cases are not decided simply because of sympathies of the jury, or sympathies or lack of understanding of the law. They're uh, judged based off of how well the lawyer for either the defendant or the prosecutor are able to show and convince said jury of the evidence of what the person has done. And with a near 80% with a near 80%, most people agree that juries judge fairly, and it would be very foolish, in my opinion, to get rid of a system that the American people have a 80% agreement is fair, when they believe that judges do not rule fairly.
And that's it.
Yep.
All right. That was kind of without much warning. So, all right. Cheers. So, nope, no worries. Usually I can kind of feel when it's tapering down, but that time I didn't see the trajectory. So
I'm still here. I gotta use the bathroom.
yeah, no worries. We're going to Groofus's first, so it's not a problem. We're gonna go to our questions.
We already did questions.
We already did questions. What the fuck am I doing, dumbass? God, seriously, guys. All right, I'm sorry, I was distracted. Jim, click that link, follow it through. Tell us who you think made the best arguments here between our two debaters. Was it McGroofus on the affirmative, or was it the empty chair Razor on the negative? Again, we're going to go ahead and go to our judges who are ready to hopefully render their judgment. You're up first, Game Boy. Game Boy, where'd you fall on this one, sir?
This was a tough debate to judge, because it felt like both parties had very strong arguments, but at the same time failed to really understand the other party's arguments as well. It felt like Razor made very strong points on the importance of diversity within a legal system, and how a jury of your peers are very important, and sort of address the issues in which removing certain elements like diversity of thought and background uh, would negatively affect the system. And Griffiths strongly put how unqualified judges, even though it was in Wayne's, of like he made a good point here, he made a shitty point there. He strongly reaffirmed constantly how it was important for judges to endpoint be qualified, and how systems like Netherlands do operate with those systems and do it quite well. I just thought that it was never pressed on the other side that strongly, the other person's position. It was just reaffirming what was said in the opening constantly over and over and over. So they were tied for, I think, the majority of the debate. And I hate to do this as a judge, but they maintained tied even after it ended 5-5.
Okay.
Yeah, except the audience.
5-5 from Game Boy. Lethe, we're on you now, sir. Where did you land on this? All right. 6-4. So 4-6 to Razor. Got it. All right. So, God bless America. This is going to be really, really tight no matter how it goes down. Chat. Yeah.
Chat, please vote, bro.
You guys are either going to, you guys are going to either choose for a, I actually forgot to mention on the last debate, by the way, it turned out that the audience voted for Russell in the last one. So it was a 2-1 split. So I figured everybody could see it. I was just in a hurry to get to the second debate and I completely fucking flopped. So, but I wanted to bring it up. So
Chat
that
does
said,
what Radish wants.
this is a weird one. This is a weird one. You guys, please go ahead and make sure you get that locked in. Give me a vote because your vote matters this time. I'm going to go ahead and give it a count of about 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look. We are on jury should be. There we go. All right. Not a lot of people voting. I'm not pleased by that. I'd like to see a whole lot more votes coming through, but we're not going to wait any longer. It looks like it is 6-4 for Groofus. So we do have a fucking tie. I hope you are very, very happy with yourself, Game Boy.
God damn it, Game Boy.
Bro, it's my
Nope.
No.
It was my second time being a judge and I had to lead to the tie. I felt so bad, but I couldn't find a reason to give it to like Rufus or Razor. My bad.
Nope. I hear you. It's fine. I hear you. So again, it ended up a tie. We have the audience coming in 6-4, Lethe coming in 4-6, and Game Boy split down the middle with a 5-5. So
the only reason Razor didn't win was because of that Netherlands point, bro. I'm so sorry.
Radish, I just want to say, is this the first time anyone's had 2 ties in a row? On your panel?
Oh fuck, it is. You're not the first person to have 2 ties, but the first time to have 2 ties in a row. Yeah, no, 100%. First person with 2 ties, I think, was Tyler. So
yeah, well, first person to have a tie was also Tyler.
Yeah, well, yeah, true story. So, all right, so that was fucking nutty.
Oh yeah, Group had a tie. Group had a tie. I was like, wait, when did I tie?
First person to have a tie. No,
yeah,
me.
Well,
I tie with.
True story. So. All right, so that was fucking nutty and whatever.
Group had a tie. I was like, wait, when did I tie?
No,
me.
Yeah.
I tie with.
He's gotten 2 5-5s in a row. So, all right. So time for us to move into our third and final debate of the night, everybody. Thank you guys very much for your patience and for sticking around. Tonight's last debate is going to be the personal versus private property distinction is meaningless. For those of you who do not know, you are about to listen to a TED Talk about communism. These are terms that refer to Marxist theory. So some people know what I'm about to, or what they're about to get into. Some people have never heard this distinction be made. Sit tight, tune in, get your pencils ready, because there's going to be some interesting stuff here. So you are up first, Mr. Adventurous. 3 minutes is on the clock. I'll start the clock when you start to talk.
Alrighty. As an author and a man who reveres and respects the institutions of knowledge and language, the arbitrary redefinition of terms is abhorrent to me. Many philosophers and their students are guilty of this, but none so prominently as Marx and his victims. Marxists use redefinition of terms and parsing of language as a primary tool in their efforts to wage ideological war. Tragically for my opponent, I know what words mean, and I do not concede any redefinition of terms put forward by any Marxist or leftist. Language is a social technology created by societies, and Marxists do not have any more special right or privilege to set terms than Christians or conservatives or bakers or janitors. The meaning of language is a constant negotiation between the members of a society, which happens through the medium of its culture, which Marxists attempt to subvert so they can control it and redefine terms, such as with the terms we are debating in this prompt. So, to be clear, what I and the vast majority of society mean when we say personal and private. Private. 1. Secluded from sight, presence, or intrusion of others. 2. Designed or intended for one's exclusive use. Personal. Of or relating to a particular person. Private. The words personal and private are so synonymous that one uses the other in its definition. That is how the overwhelming majority of English speakers understand the terms, and Marxists do not have any grounds or right to create a distinction where the rest of us say it does not exist. If they wish to maintain that distinction amongst themselves, we can't stop them, but they must accept that the rest of us are going to point and laugh at them because they don't know what basic words mean. Additionally, one at a time, anytime, a communist government might redefine what the boundaries of personal and private are, using it as an excuse to seize your property regardless of how you're actually using it. 2. A perfect communist government would still be within its ideological purview to take your car, even if the only non-personal use occurs once a week to give a friend a ride in exchange for gas and lunch. 3. Communists argue their boogeyman of private property because it allows the extraction of surplus value from labor. But the extraction of surplus value from labor is actually the only way to ensure everyone's needs are met due to the forces of entropy. And 4. Communists say private property is a matter of social exploitation and not a natural right, but unless my opponent wants to grant me the existence of the Christian God, then there is no such thing as a natural right, and if I am stronger than you, you can't do shit about what I want to do or what anyone else wants to do. And with that, I cede my time.
All right. Vigilante, 3 minutes is on the clock for cross-examination, sir. Use this time as you see fit.
Yeah, so a family that owns their home has property rights that are worth protecting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, a private equity firm that owns 40,000 homes that doesn't live in any of them and they're purely to generate yield also has property rights worth protecting, correct?
Yes.
So if a city passes a vacancy tax and it applies just to homes held as empty investment assets, but exempts private primary residences. Under your position, does the tax violate the homeowner's rights, the firm's rights, or both equally?
I assume by a vacancy tax, that means that if a home is sitting vacant, a special tax is levied on the owner?
Correct.
Well, it's highly unlikely that a vacancy tax would, if applied honestly, would even be used to target a standard homeowner. So that would pretty much be a tax solely designed to go after institutional business.
It can be used to attack personal homeowners too, just like the one that was recently done in New York. But so the attacks does apply to the firm, not the homeowner, because one is using the property and the other is holding it for extraction. Correct?
Well, again, this is something that would be highly circumstantial. If the government chose to levy that tax against a homeowner who, say, wasn't in their house for 6 months out of the year for whatever reason, then of course it could also go against a private citizen. Um, but again, that's circumstantial. It's going to be breakdown of how it's actually applied.
Okay. So does the American tax code uh, tax capital gains different at a different rate than wage income?
Yes.
Okay. Does bankruptcy law protect a primary residence differently than investment properties under homestead exemptions?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, but I'm sure that's one of those things that varies by state.
Mhm. Antitrust laws target companies with market power over individuals who simply own personal property, correct?
Can you say that one more time, please?
Antitrust laws target companies with market power over others, not individuals who simply own personal property, correct?
Well, yeah, antitrust laws are specifically anti-company regulation.
Mhm. Yeah, so the American tax code, bankruptcy laws, antitrust framework all treat these categories asymmetrically right now today. Does the existing American law have a meaningless distinction or a meaningful one?
You can go ahead and answer that, Adventurous.
So you're trying to shoehorn in a legal definition and equivocate it to a philosophical definition. At a philosophical level, there is no distinction between personal and private property. And what you're doing is taking the way the government governs the actions of businesses in relation to their property and trying to equivocate that to the argument of how we treat all property. I'm not going to let it fly. Like,
All right. Good enough. 3 minutes is on the clock now for you, Vigilante. It is your uninterrupted opening. Go ahead and start when you're ready.
Yeah. So family owns the home they live in. A private equity firm owns 40,000 homes across America as yield generating assets, vacant or rented at maximum extraction. Zach says there is no meaningful distinction between those two things. That position has consequences. It means that housing policy cannot name what it is trying to fix. It means that labor law cannot explain why a worker and employer aren't equal parties in a contract. When you call a distinction meaningless, you do not have you do not make the difference disappear. You just obfuscate to make people unable to talk about it. So when is a distinction meaningful? A distinction is meaningful when it tracks a real difference and when the difference has practical consequences for how we reason, legislate, and act. By that standard, the personal versus private property distinction passes easily. It tracks a real categorical difference between property that you use versus property you own to extract returns from. That difference has consequences, philosophical, yes, but also legal and economic. Zach must show it tracks nothing real or that the consequences don't matter. Neither position is one that anyone can defend. The distinction already matters in practice. In American law, your home and a hedge fund's rental portfolio are treated as categorically different things. Corporations are taxed at a different rate than wages because Congress recognizes that corporate income and workers' income are different kinds of economic activity. The homestead exemption protects your personal residence in bankruptcy while investment properties are liquidated because the law recognizes that your home and a landlord's rental portfolio serve different social functions. Antitrust laws target companies with significant market power over uh, over others, not individuals with personal property. Zach says this distinction is meaningless. The U.S. tax code, bankruptcy law, and antitrust framework all disagree. The question isn't whether the distinction exists, it manifestly does. In the law we already live under. The question is whether we can name it clearly enough to defend it, or whether we want to pretend it isn't there so we can obfuscate that there is no difference between personal property and private property used to generate capital. And I see the rest of my time.
All right. 3 minutes is on the clock for you now, Zach. Please go ahead and ask questions, poke holes, set up arguments. The time is yours to use as you see fit.
So, I'm not sure if I have any questions, but I do want to point out two things. One, my opponent admitted in his opening there that the communist definition hinges on what you can do, what you can use to extract value. Well, if their whole defining line is what property I can use to extract value, then my toothbrush can become the means of production if there's a toothbrush shortage and I rent it out to the whole neighborhood. My car, my dog, my wife, anything can become the means of production if we're willing to just say, well, what can I extract value from? That's why the distinction is insidious on its face. It is designed to allow a communist government to say, nope, you're getting surplus value out of that. It's mine now. It's so obvious, it boggles the imagination how it actually fools anyone. That's thing one. Thing two, government offering social protections does not mean that property protections should be different. Just because a individual has a home that is owned for business or private use and the government sees a distinction there, that does not mean that we should see a distinction as it relates to other areas of law. Everything exists within its context. The government does not have a right to seize any private individual's property. How the government asks that someone liquidate assets when they have to declare bankruptcy or get divorced or other circumstance is totally different than the conversation around whether or not the government has a right to seize assets in any circumstance whatsoever as it defines. And that's what's being debated. We're not debating, oh, well, in these niche circumstances where we're talking about social protections, the property is defined this way, and therefore the distinction exists across the board. We're asking ourselves, okay, does this distinction exist? Or I misphrased myself there, but what we're asking is, does this distinction exist across the board in every situation all the time? And no, it doesn't. Circumstances obviously change when things are defined a certain way and how things are applied. I'm happy to get into the open.
All right. Well, then with that, I'm going to go ahead and put 15 minutes on the clock. You gentlemen just go ahead and roll straight into it.
So how do you account for the common use of language and the insistence of communists to redefine it?
It's not an insistence of communists to redefine it. It's using an adjective to change the meaning of a word. So when we put the word personal in front of the word property, it changes the meaning of the word. When we put the word private in front of property, it changes the meaning of the word. Also, just since you wanted to bring up Marx, what Marx actually said about property in the Communist Manifesto, by the way, is the distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeoisie property.
Yeah, I'm aware he said that. And again, it all hinges on what can be used to extract surplus value. But again, a communist government can arbitrarily define what you can and can't extract surplus value from. If I let my friend stay in my house a couple days a month because he travels for work, well, now I'm extracting surplus value from my house by giving him room and board. Now my house is the government's.
No, because the definition of private property distinctly says things that you own without using, deriving income from others. So a factory, a rental housing, land leased to a tenant, tenant farmers, ownership grounded in a legal title, generating property through exclusion. So it is specifically property that is only used to generate profit. If you use that property for personal use as well, it is personal property. It is not private property.
Profit is a term that denotes a marker of value. If I am using my personal property to provide value to another citizen, regardless of whether or not there is monetary exchange, a communist government can easily say you are providing surplus value, even if there's no monetary exchange.
Again, you're ignoring the first part of the definition, which is things that you own without using.
I don't use my house.
You do use your house, which is what makes it personal property. So, say renting out a room in your house to your friend because he's on a work trip, that doesn't make your house suddenly private property because you use
so
your
you're
house.
saying if I am only in my house 6 months of the year and I let people occasionally stay in it, that gives the government a right to seize my house?
No, you still use your house. If you own a house
so
and you
where's the
don't use
dividing
it at
line?
all, and you
How
use
many
it,
months of the year do I have to use my house to maintain my ownership of it before the communist government can take it away?
the defining line is if you don't use it at all, because the definition.
Oh, okay, got it. So if I
use.
step foot in my factory and walk onto the assembly line and assemble one goddamn piece of equipment in my factory once a year, I am no longer extracting surplus value, and the government can't seize the means of production. Excellent. Thanks, bro.
So you want to pretend like the communist philosophers are the only ones that distinguish the difference between private and personal property. You do realize that there are a number of capitalist philosophers that also make this distinction, especially specifically with housing, correct?
I don't care how many philosophers make the distinction. It's a BS distinction. I don't care if Marx made it. I don't care if you can point to leaders in the Christian church. I don't care if Donald F. and Trump said it. It's a BS distinction.
I mean, just because you believe the distinction is bullshit doesn't mean that the distinction itself is bullshit. It actually has meaning, especially applicable to modern day law. We make
Again,
the
a
distinction
distinguishment
within the
in one
law.
area of law does not necessarily carry over to another point of law. You would never go into a court of law and argue in a criminal case using legal precedent from divorce law. It doesn't, like, it's not how that works at all. Legal distinction here does not equivocate to legal distinction over here. Property protection law does not relate to seizing of asset law necessarily. Sometimes they cross over, but that's another conversation.
We make this distinction. We make this distinction in multiple different aspects of the law: tax code, bankruptcy law, antitrust frameworks, the way that we regulate corporations versus the way that we regulate people. This is a distinction that is used throughout the law.
Okay, well, fine then. You can say that's a distinction used throughout the law. Still doesn't change the fact, by your own metric that you gave me, if any property owner walks into their facility or walks onto their field and uses their plowshare once a year at all ever, then it's personal property. So it seems like a pretty meaningless distinction.
It still has a distinction because of the fact that it hinges on the fact of you owning it without using it.
Do you understand? Do you understand that the modifying word here, meaningless, is pivotal? Because if I can use something once a year or once every other year or however, as long as I do sometimes personally use it, then the distinction ceases to have any functional purpose. Even if I were to grant you that the areas of law have meaningful crossover and we can use this area of law to talk about this other area of law, you've already conceded that if I use my plowshare once a year, then it's personal, that it's personal property. So it's meaningless. In effect, the distinction offers no functional value, aka it's meaningless.
Because the distinction isn't meant to regulate small business owners. It's a distinction that's meant to regulate large bourgeoisie companies.
See, now, guys, now we've pivoted to, well, yeah, sometimes the distinction in the area of law matters. It only applies to big business, guys, not small business. It only applies to the means of production if we're talking about big megacorps, guys. Tax the billionaires, guys.
The whole point is to get rid of the bourgeois. Like when we're talking about it in the communist concept, right? The whole point is to get rid of the bourgeoisie. Sure, we have the concept of the petty bourgeoisie that's more of a modern concept because it's primarily talking about like middle management and stuff, right? But when we're talking about the bourgeoisie and the concept of communism, we're talking about the large landowners that were primarily the ones that owned the majority of the land throughout all of feudalistic society, because it was all of this was written under feudalism. It wasn't written under capitalism.
Land has been consolidated in the hands of the few for the entirety of human history. That's not an argument. If you understood how resources naturally accumulate, you would know that throughout history, in every human civilization ever, resources always have a peak curve. They always accumulate at the top of the hierarchy. That's a function of human civilization as a whole. It has nothing to do with this philosophy or that philosophy.
Okay. Look, bro, like I've said, like we make this distinction in the legal tax code. Like the distinction has meaning for a reason. It doesn't just boil down to communist theory, communism bad. It's an actual distinction that is made in the law. You can boil it down to communism bad because communism actually defines them, but that doesn't mean there isn't a distinction between the two things.
Well, again, now I pivot back to meaningless. You can have a theoretical distinction all you want, but where rubber hits the road, where things actually get applied in the real world is what gives them actual tangible meaning. And if I can use my property once a year and it switches from being private to personal because I used it once a year, it is a meaningless distinction. It has no practical application at that point. Unless you actually want to set some hard definitions on when the usage converts from personal to private, and then we have to have a whole separate discussion about, well, why does the government get to decide how much I need to use my house before they can seize it?
And so we can look at how the distinction is made in the US tax code, right? So we have your wage income, you have self-employment income, which would be a lot of like small business owners and stuff, and then you have corporate income. The self-employment income being that kind of weird middle ground between the two, because there is like the weird middle ground between the two, which is what you're using to obfuscate the difference between the two.
Okay, so are you trying to argue that income is a form of property?
Income is not necessarily a form of property. It is the extraction from use of property.
Okay, so what's your point?
So when we look at like the worker, right? The worker, he is his body is his own personal property. So his use of his own personal property himself in the corporate setting generates him his income. The self-employed person generates his own income however they do. There's so many different ways that a self-employed person can generate income. A corporation generates income that so that way or through the extraction of the work of others, right? The distinction.
Still waiting this to wrap around on where this gives the distinction meaning. Are we going to get there?
The distinction is the fact that the corporation is separate.
I didn't ask what the distinction is. I asked, does it have any practical meaning?
Yes, we apply this in tax law by taxing them in different ways.
So you're using your this is kind of funny. You're using how income is taxed while not saying that income is property. You're using how income is taxed to argue for the distinction in types of property. That's non sequitur.
Income is generated through the use of property.
Right, but how we tax income is how we tax income. So unless the income itself is a type of property, you can't use the income to say that the property distinction has meaning unless it fits into the category. That's a category error and non sequitur.
No, because the whole definition on between the two is between distinguishing the two is literally based on the production of value. It's not a non sequitur because what the distinction between the two is literally whether or not it generates value.
Okay, let's say I hypothetically let's say I granted that. Now, if I'm going to grant that, you're going to have to tell me exactly where the line is, and you're going to have to tell me why it is that a communist government isn't going to arbitrarily redefine where that line is at any time to seize property that it wants, like has always happened.
I've already given you the line. The line is whether or not you use it. So like if we talk about like housing policy, right? When we talk about whether or not we should get rid of corporate owned housing, the distinction there is the fact that they use it for either rental income or just let it sit, which is one of the reasons why we have a massive housing shortage in America.
Well, it looks like that's time, and my only again, how much do I need to use it? Once a year, twice a year, once a decade? It seems like a distinction's pretty damn meaningless if we can't button down where the dividing lines are in practical terms.
Radish, you're muted.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and kick this over to the question section. We're going to go to you first, Adventurous. So, you said in your for-profit piece of property. Do you know by any chance what the terminology for that is in our legal system? Do we have a term for that distinction? Or is it just for-profit and not-for-profit?
Well, I don't know about in the legal system. I know that in investor speak, because the real estate sector is one of the places I do business, things are referred to either as income generating property or private property. I'm sorry, not private property, or private residence. Yeah. So if you're talking about where someone actually lives, like let's say an investor is talking about properties he owns, he would typically say my residence or my personal house in reference to the property he actually has. And if he was referring to his income generating properties, whether they be single family, apartment buildings, whatever, he would refer to it as an income property. Now that's how investors speak. I don't know if that carries over to legal definitions or not.
All right, fair enough. And now we're going to go over to you, Game Boy. A question, please, for Adventurous.
I don't think I have one.
Wow. Hard fail. Hard fail, Game Boy.
Yeah.
All right,
Tragic.
Lethe.
Sorry, I'm not Ancom.
No, it's all right. Lethe, do you have a question ready for Adventurous, please?
In theory, however, the issue with going down that rabbit hole is there's literally 70,000 pages of tax code. And I recently spoke to a business associate who had 4 different IRS agents fill out his tax return with him, and he had 4 different tax returns. So, in theory, does the legal language exist in the tax code? Yes. In practice, does anyone know what it really is?
Right. And now we're going to go ahead and kick a question over to Vigilante. So I need you to explain something or explain it more, please. You said that a person's body is their personal property, but you also said that any personal property which is used for profit makes it private property instead of personal property. So as soon as I am using my body for profit, because you did mention that income is property, as soon as I am using my body for profit, how does my body not become immediately private property, which would therefore be not only taxed differently, but also available to confiscation by the state?
Okay, so I think that was a slight misspeak on my part. So it's specifically things that you own without using is what's classified as personal property. So things that are just strictly there to generate value, because you utilize your body for other things than generating yourself profit. It is your personal property, not private property.
Okay. And chance to redeem yourself, Game Boy. Give me a good
I
question
got
for
one.
Vigilante, please.
I got one. Trust me.
Let me hear it.
What is the importance of a philosophical definition of the distinction between private and personal property?
It's so that way we can distinguish between the two, so we know the difference between the two, so we can legislate between the so that way we can legislate on it. It's important for being able to legislate on the two distinctly different things.
Okay. And Lethe, your turn, sir. Please go ahead and hit Vidge with a question.
I mean, technically all definitions are arbitrary, so I mean you could say that they're arbitrary. I mean, there is a distinct definition between the two. So the actual definition of personal property is the things that you use. So your home, your clothes, your car, your toothbrush, your tools. it's specifically possessions that are grounded in use and occupancy. And then, as I said earlier, private property is the things that you own without using. They're specifically for deriving income, either from sitting around and just generating value like rental housing, or from others' labor like a factory or rental housing.
All right. Yeah, thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and kick this over to y'all's closings. I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock for each of y'all. This is your uninterrupted chance to put a cherry on top. Give us your closing thoughts, closing arguments. I'll start the clock whenever you start to talk, Mr. Adventures.
Yeah, so I won't need 3 minutes here. My opponent failed to demonstrate a valid reason we should make the distinction in practice. He could not provide objective criteria where the distinction actually mattered beyond personal use. After that first check, everything falls apart. He could not provide a dividing line between exactly how much use constitutes enough use to get it from private to personal. And again, the prompt specifically asks, is there a meaningful distinction? A theoretical distinction or a distinction that exists in other places of law does not necessarily carry over to every other area of law, as we beat to death pretty thoroughly. All of my other points were unaddressed. I was kind of hoping we were going to get into some of those, especially some of the finer points, such as surplus value extraction being literally the only way you can account for entropy. But unfortunately, that will have to wait for another debate. So I cede my time.
Great. And Vigilante, 3 minutes is now on the clock for you. Go ahead and start it up when you're ready.
Yeah, so he said I didn't make a distinction between the two. I'm gonna reread the first part of my opening statement. So a family owns the home that they live in a private equity home. For a private equity firm owns 40,000 homes across America, strictly as yield-generating assets to be vacant or rented out at maximum extraction. That is a firm example of the distinction between the two. Again, the definition being that personal property is the things that you utilize in your daily life, and the possessions that are grounded in use and occupancy. Private property being things that you own without using, things, again, like that are specifically meant to generate income, things like rental housing, things like a factory, things like vacant homes owned by a hedge fund. This saying that there is no meaningful distinction between these two does nothing outside of say that we cannot define the difference between these two things when we very clearly can. Just because you don't like the definition of these two things, and just because you don't like where the definition comes from, doesn't mean that there isn't a distinction between the two things. Hell, as I mentioned, there are even capitalist philosophers who make a distinction between these two things, one of which being Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. He said, landlords, like all other men, love to reap where they never sowed and demand a rent even for the natural produce of the land. Even the capitalist philosophers acknowledge the distinction between the two, saying that you don't like the definition, so there is no distinction, is nothing more than saying, I want to obfuscate so we can't tell the difference between these two and not be able to legislate on them properly. And I'll see the rest of my time.
All right. Thank you both very, very much. That was great stuff, gentlemen. You guys know what time it is. I'm dropping the link into the chat. This is the vote for that debate. One more time, are you voting for If You're Feeling Adventurous on the affirmative or Vigilante TV on the negative? We are going to kick this over to our judges, but make sure you get those votes locked in, because one of them might, I don't know, give us a 5-5 again. And so it's going to matter. So make sure you guys get those locked in as quick as possible. So, Game Boy, I hope you have an answer or a judgment ready.
Oh, I'm about to glaze the fuck out of one of them, bro.
I figured you were. Go ahead and get in there. Where did this
Bro,
land?
we saw the Barry Bonds of debate tonight, folks. This was crazy. No offense to Vigi at all. Um, I just want to say what happened all before the back and forth. He shut down all advances between philosophical and legal definitions. He shut down what was gonna be Vigi's scripted opening and maintained all dominance in the cross exam that wasn't even his, and the weakness in the definitions by reframing it as practical definitions rather than theoretical, basically saying I don't even need marks for this definition. This was all before Vigi's opening. I want to clarify this was cross X. He already had like 8-2 by the time it was even Vigi's opening. Then Vigi's opening gained Vigi a point. But it didn't even matter because by the time there was already the back and forth, he said he doesn't care about the non-communist philosophers because that wasn't what the prompt was about. He stayed on prompt. He he ignored the whole legal practical application because he was saying it's purely philosophical, and not only that, but the philosophy in practice, which is a crazy jump to make while also avoiding the legal elements of that. But he made it in a way that made perfect sense and said that you have to have this practical within the entire political system. And then he somehow purposely misunderstood what Vigi was saying, making it seem like, at least that's what I thought with the whole income and property thing. But he said that in such a way where it made Vigi have to re-explain it and made Vigi somehow seem dumb, even though it was basically adventurous misunderstanding what Vigi was saying. And then once we got to the Q&As, Vigi somehow didn't answer Lethe and my prompts, but used his closing for those answers. So he wasted some of the closing that he could have used to answer some of Adventurous's points. So Adventurous didn't even need a closing that entire time. It was 10-0. Like, but that was like Michael Jordan. This was like this was crazy to me. I'm sorry. There was
Shots
more.
fired. All right. No, we got a 10-0 win there, according to Game Boy. So, Lethe, how did you see this? Where did you fall on this? What's your score?
The fuck? No, it wasn't.
Wow.
Wasn't what you were saying in DMs.
Okay. So, this is fucking bedlam and anarchy, kids. We have a 10-0 and a 5-5. So it really does fall into y'all's lap. Out there in the chat, please click that link. I'm going to click it one more time. Please click.
Bro, it's tied
this
in
link.
the poll, bro. It's tied
Are you
in the
shitting
poll.
me?
Someone
Okay,
do
so
something. It can't
yeah,
be a
I'm not.
10,
So
10,
don't
5,
don't
5.
tell me that because I can't see
Yeah.
it. So I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. I'm gonna say that I have a whole bunch to I whole page of notes that I'm looking forward to the after party, and I hope both of y'all are able to stick around for it because there were some points brought up that I had never heard in this argument before. There were some points that I heard got debunked that I hear all the time. I definitely thought that it was a stellar performance, but I'm also curious to hear more from Lethe about his disappointment, or I missed the part where the prompt was conceded at the beginning. So I'm hoping you're going to be able to lay all that out for me. I believe you, but somehow
Mind
that
you,
got past me. So
Lethe said that Vigi was being juggernauted and then changed his mind. I want it to be said that Lethe thought that it was like an ass whooping up until the very end when he got time to ask his question.
got you.
So let's not
I
act
see.
like it was a 5-5 the entire time.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, hey, last chance, everybody. Click that and vote. I'm going to give you all about a 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds,
Oh
1
shit.
seconds. Get them locked in
One
because I haven't
person
clicked it
came
yet.
in.
Personal property versus, there we go. Results are, fuck me, 10-9. So
Oh
for the
shit.
points, it's going down as a 5-5, but for the win, that is going to be a adventurous win. So just so everybody knows, that's because it is 52% to 47%. We round it to the nearest point for the actual like scorekeeping on the rankings. But for the purposes of the actual voting, if it is not a dead tie, it is actually and we've got more coming trickling in for adventurous. So once again, absolutely great stuff.
Okay, he's buying bots.
Adventurous,
Adventurous.
you get the win, although by the weirdest fucking statistical margin I've ever seen. So good stuff. All right, so that concludes another night here in the DMZ. For those of you who are going to stick around, the next part is not going to be on the VOD. If you want to see this part, you have to be here live, or you have to be a subscriber on Twitch. And then you'll be able to see it for at least the last 10 or for 2 weeks after it was live. Thank you again to all of tonight's debaters. We hope this has been as awesome for you as it has been for us. We are always open to feedback and suggestions, so let us know if you have any ideas on how we can improve the experience for you. Above all, thank you to all of the viewers out there. We wouldn't be here without you. We do this every Friday and Saturday night, starting at 7 p.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. So make sure to follow us, and you will get the notifications every time we go live. Subs and donos always help to keep the production improving, and once they become more regular, they will be shared with the winning debaters. So help us out if you can. But if you can't, that's fine too. You can also help by spreading the word about what we're doing here. Finally, if you haven't already, join the free Discord server where you can join into the conversations and where we go after the lights go off and the cameras go away. That is where you can tell me if you are interested in participating in these debates and giving this whole thing a shot. So we hope we will get to see you guys for the next round. And with that, we are officially in the after party. I have to piss like a racehorse. Please, everybody, behave yourselves. If anybody else needs to drink
Sorry,
yeah, that's we got so much to talk about. But you guys talk amongst yourselves.
Like I just said in chat, the only way to win against retarded positions is to not engage with them. I knew I was going to lose when I took this debate.
And you shouldn't have. And you shouldn't have. I'm sorry. That's like going against Wimby now, bro.
So realistically, like, yeah, you should have won. You definitely should have won that. The problem, like, you should.
Holy shit! You're so hot. You're so hot, Griffiths. You're so hot, Griffiths. You're so hot. You're so.
You should have dug in the fact that he ceded the ground to you almost immediately.
Oh, and I was telling like Lethe to not count Adventurous off on that too much because Vigi didn't say anything. Because I noticed
that. I know that was pissing me off. I'm playing haste right now, and that pissed me off. I was like, God damn it!
It was like it was part of the reason